Here's a look at the inside. You can see the cage, the attachment plates are pretty generous in the rear. That's good to see. They go all the way up to the sheet metal that supports the rear struts. Still see some of the wiring harness. A diagonal brace for triangulation, and a straight bar goes across the spare tire opening, help stiffen that up, help make the car stronger in case of a side impact. The seat has a seat back brace. The red wire is for the driver's radio communications. The cage is SCCA certified. It's a pretty good fit. It goes nice and tight up to the ceiling. And the fronts are nice and tight up against the roof. The sides go pretty tight against the doorway or the side of the car. You can see the driver's side window net there, the window. And there's aluminum panels on the floor. I don't know if they're visible. You can see the fire extinguisher system. And then this net is a right side net for the driver. The passenger side just has an X for the door, where the driver's side is more of the NASCAR style bars. There's nice gussets, a little angled gusset behind the seat there, and then there's gussets on the windshield header, and then there's also these little welded on sheet metal gussets at that A-pillar bend. And then in the footwell there's a bar that extends forward to protect the feet for crash protection, and then the bar also goes through the dash. Let's see if we can see that. I don't know if the camera's picking it up in there, but you can see the crossbar inside the vent there. For the driver's side, it's got an aluminum pedal that's been put on there. Again, it's got that aluminum floor with some kind of sandpaper grippy material and a little kind of shield plate on the side, I guess so that the wiring harness doesn't get in the way of the driver's feet. It's got the red handle here for the fire system, and then it has an electrical shut-off switch that'll kill the car while it's running. Here's the view inside the cockpit. Again, you can see the radio there in the dash. The switch is for the cool shirt. It has just a standard rear view mirror. I think I'm probably going to put in a longer Wink multi-panel mirror. You can see the red fire extinguisher nozzle up there. And there's another one here right in front of the driver. You can see in front of the mirror is a camera. And you can also see on the roof over here, that's another camera that watches the driver. It's got a quick disconnect steering wheel and the instrument cluster. The pedals down there. This coily wires the radio push-to-talk button. You put it on your steering wheel or put it some other place. I'll start it up for you. It's got this pretty nifty dash with the tach on the left and then digital speedometer. Here's the Chevy Sonic's engine. It's a 1.8 liter Ecotec, normally aspirated. That means no turbocharger. It looks pretty clean. It looks pretty stock. Here's your air cleaner housing here, which goes down this pipe. Apparently there is a restrictor plate. I haven't opened it up to find it yet, but it would be down there right before the throttle body. This goes into kind of a plastic intake manifold that's below that mess of hoses, which is your fuel system. And the air goes into the backside of the engine where that silver rail is the fuel rail. I think you can just make out the injectors there. So one injector for each runner. So that goes into the engine. I did find that under here is your spark plugs. So this must be the like the coil pack. It must be kind of one coil pack for all 4 plugs. And then the 4 plugs are down in those holes. And then your exhaust is on this side of the engine. An oxygen sensor, 1 catalytic converter's here, and then another catalytic converter's further downstream. You have a belt-driven water pump over here. You can see the hose coming from the radiator right there, and then the hose on this side as you return to the radiator. You can see that there are 2 kind of mid-size black rubber hoses that come off of that housing where that other hose is. Let's see if I can get the camera to see it here. Yeah, kind of right under this black plug, right here. So this housing, that's probably where the thermostat lives, and then those black hoses go to the firewall to where the heater core is for the heat. And then the silver tubes that come out of the firewall, that would be for your AC evaporator. This car's had the AC removed. You can see that those lines terminate right there by the headlight. The engine computer is right here next to the battery. This car has a little transmission breather installed. I don't know if the light will pick it up, but it goes down to the transmission by the shift linkage. The shift linkage is right down there. It has those 2 cables, kind of push rod cables connected to it. One cable is for your side-to-side movement, and the other cable is for your front and back movement on the shifter. It has an Optima battery, which Optima is a Pirelli World Challenge sponsor, so all the cars run Optima batteries. Of course, your radiator coolant overflow tank in the front, and your windshield washer reservoir on the side, and a plastic box that says "Do not open, wrench and manual, and do not pressure wash." So, I don't know, maybe it's a fuse box, maybe more electronics there. I'll have to poke around and see. Now look at that, it is a fuse box. It's got a little fuse puller tool, this little white plier thingy, just to grab a fuse and to pull it out if you ever have to change a fuse. The boxy things are relays. Those are just big electrical switches for high current switches. And here's a map, it looks like, of what all of the different fuses and relays do. Here's the front suspension, stock brake rotors, cobalt friction brake pads, good racing brake pad. This is the GM Performance suspension package. It has an aluminum camber plate up at the top, and then a threaded strut, actually a upside down strut. You can see the fat part of the body is up high, and the skinny rod of the shaft goes into here. Keeps the unsprung weight a little lighter. It's got stainless steel brake lines. The camber adjustments are right here, these 2 bolts. One bolt is in eccentric, so it as you turn it, it will pull or push this steering knuckle part in or out. So of course as this moves outward you have less camber, and as it moves inward you have more camber. It's got a drop link for the sway bar, which is threaded, and you can adjust it for when you corner balance. Make sure there's no preload on the sway bar. The sway bar is this fat bar here that goes under the, kind of above the subframe. This is your steering tie rod. Your outer tie rod end is here. The inner tie rod end is under the rubber boot. And then your control arm is this black kind of triangular piece that swings up and down as the wheel moves. This is a McPherson strut system. And then of course, being front wheel drive, you've got your axle and your CV joint here, and then this cable is for your wheel speed sensor. The ABS computer can detect which wheels are spinning or not spinning. Rear suspension is kind of typical, a trailing beam. There's two pivot points, one on this side and one on the other side, and it's connected, so as one side goes up, the other side will want to go up. So it's not exactly an independent suspension. However, there is some flex in this middle part here, and so that acts a little bit like a sway bar. You can see the parking brake cable down low going to the drum brake, and you can see the stainless steel brake line here. Drum brakes have a wheel cylinder right here. You can see the bleeders under the little cap. You can see the stainless steel brake line going to it. It also has a wheel speed sensor, so it can detect if the wheel is spinning or not. And then this has the aftermarket shock in the rear, the coilover shock in the rear, with a nice upper mount, and then another threaded body with a coilover. The original suspension would have had a spring on right here, going from this bump into that little pocket, and then it just had a plain shock in this spot. Underneath the car, it has a Borla exhaust system. You can see that there's no extra mufflers. It's pretty much all straight pipe. And then here's your secondary catalytic converter here, and the primary catalytic converter is under that heat shield right there. Not this flex pipe. The flex pipe is just to allow for any vibration or movement between the pipes so it doesn't crack. But your other catalytic converter's right here. So it's got an oxygen sensor before this cat, which was visible up at the top of the engine, and then there's an additional oxygen sensor here after the cat. Looking at the bottom of the engine, this is of course the oil pan. It says 14 Newton meters is the tightening torque for the oil drain plug. The transmission is this kind of rounded cover here, which has no drain plug, so it looks like you just take that whole cover off. There's probably a gasket around there when you change that. You can see both axles. There's an axle on this side going to that wheel, to the right side wheel, coming from the transmission. Here's the CV joint on the transmission side. And then on this side of the transmission is the axle going to the left wheel. And again, another CV joint with the boot, and then that axle goes right out to the wheel hub. There's the alternator on the back side of the engine, kind of under the intake manifold. Probably not terribly pleasant to change. And on this side, see if we get the camera there, that's the starter right above that CV joint there. Again, doesn't look terribly easy to change.